Welcome, everybody, to Counterclipping Show number 206 for January 20th, 2025. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this evening. Listen to Stacking Liberty is right. Once again, thanks, everybody, for coming out this evening. Our topic is the best of GMT games, and our years are 2008 to 2010. We got like 34 things to go through, so I'm going to make an attempt to get to the topic as quickly as possible, which I think we can do. We are drinking Plantation Original Dark Rum. I tried it before. I mean, I've had a little bit of it, so I didn't hate it, but at the moment it's hitting my palate a lot like rubbing alcohol or some other kind of solvent. So I'm not loving it. I put some water in it. We'll see if that helps. We are still clipping ASL. However, once I clear out the mess from me clipping ASL, we're probably going to be getting to that, the Forgotten Battles, because I think we are going to be playing it in the next couple of months, which will be fantastic. So, see. So, a lot of talk about the weather here. We had almost a week solid of moderate snowfall, and it's currently fuck this degrees outside. So, we'll see. I may not be making the commute this week. We'll see what the weather looks like tomorrow. But in any case, we do have some news to go through. But before we get started on that, I want to remind everybody to please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I'd like to give a big shout out to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, without whose support and encouragement it would not be possible to keep doing this, as well as our good friends at Noble Knight Games, the official sponsor of the Counterclipping Show. We will hear from them later, but in the meantime, there is an affiliate link in the video description, which you can use if you're going to buy stuff from Noble Knight anyway. You might as well send me a few bucks in store credit. We are working towards the Bloodreef Tarawa. Now, they don't have it in stock at the moment, but I don't have the money for it right now anyway, so it all might work out. We may pivot if it comes to that, but I will tell you that the only two ASL historicals that I do not already have that I want are Bloodreef Tarawa and Valor of the Guards. So I'm not like going to be going after all those crazy, ridiculously high-priced ASL historical modules. There's no way we're doing that. Brant, thanks so much for the support. It is much appreciated. I'm going to mention this in the news segment. We'll be doing SPI Quad Fest at Buckeye Game Fest at the end of April. So we will talk more about that. I actually already have the Gamer's Guide to Bloodreef Tarawa, just not Bloodreef Tarawa. So that's not a problem. But we will talk about this more as it gets a little bit closer. My next physical in-person convention will be Winterfest, and then the next one after that is Buckeye Game Fest. I don't think Piper's all that great, to be honest. Think about what would be involved in that. It's mostly armor battles. That's not the thing that ASL excels at, to be honest. So I actually did have Piper 1 and 2 back in the day. I don't have them now, and I am fine with that. The historicals that I have are Hatton. I do have the starter kit historical. I've got Red Factories, which is Red Barricades and Red October. I've got Festung Budapest, and I might have another one, plus the little ones that tend to show up in the new versions of the modules. Tarawa is the specific, the Stalingrad ones and the Tarawa one are the ones that I want. So, I didn't think Piper was particularly interesting for ASL. If you're going to play something like that out, I feel like you're better off playing out in a different system, to be honest. So I did not shave, nor was there a haircut. There was instead a tragic lawnmower accident. So in any case. All right, so before we go any further, let's say hello to Alistair Logie, B. Goebel, Bayonet Brant from the Armchair Dragoons, Bert Matus, Blue Steel, Board Gaming Geezer, Charles Zatora, Chris Yap, Christoph de Klerk, Daniel Silverthorne, Danny Seckery, Dave Poirier, David Imperato, David Zell, DJ Flippy, Ed Holtzman, Eric Goebel, Grunyard Rich, HUN644 New, the legend himself, Fucko, is here. Jeff, Joe Clifford, Faust is here from sunny Northeast Ohio, Joe Hammond, Joe Okabayashi, Joe Perez, Joe Mentum, John Clark, Jonathan Dyer, Carl Crater from the Wargame Bootcamp, Kilroy from Kilroy is here, Kyle Harris, Lee Grant, Mark McNair, Marty Sample, Meandering Mike, Michael Simon, P51D Fan, Panzer Division Lair, Paul Dangle, Perfidious Albion, Ray Garvey, Rob Johnson, Stacking Limit, Stephen Rochelle, Tim Greenaw, Tony Mammal, Vince Ree, Vishka, welcome to the show. William Aarons, William Bird, and Winterson. I apologize to anybody that I missed thanks to YouTube. So I wish that was like a setting I could control. It isn't. As far as how quickly the participants time out of the chat. So we're still clipping Italians here. Here in day 53 of No Tobacco. So I think I might step down nicotine content in the vape juice again pretty soon. That's more a function of it is a pain in the ass to get it without in the correct concentrations. And I might just go to 0. So we will see exactly what happens with that. But we're still doing that. But hey, day 53 of No Tobacco, so I'm happy about that. Now, we do have a variety of short GMT news notes, but before I talk to that, I might as well acknowledge that I am working on another game design. It is a fantasy role-playing game. You may or may not see video on it. If you don't worry about it, because it didn't go anywhere. And if it does go somewhere, you're not going to be inundated with video about it. So there's that. Anyway, so let's talk about the GMT news. So a little bird whispered in my ear that By Sword and Bayonet is very close to shipping from the printer to GMT games. So I think it's pretty likely that we may see that as soon as in next month's GMT shipments. So we will see when we get the next update. Now, speaking of GMT update, we mentioned in whatever show it was where we covered the last GMT update about a shipping solution that is friendly to Australia and New Zealand. That shipping option should be available right now on GMT's website for anybody that is interested. And God knows the poor folks in Australia and New Zealand could use some relief from shipping war games from the United States. So there's that. Also, let me pull this up. There's this issue. So the 2024 replacement counter sheet, the errata counter sheet, was not supposed to have shipping charged. They charged shipping for it, and then they refunded everybody. That should already be done. If you thought your charges were a little too high, then that might be why, but you should also have seen something like a $5 or something like that refund come through in the last few days or so. I could have sworn they did this exact same thing last year with the 2023 counter sheet, but be that as it may. So let me fix this and go to that. One other thing that I do, well, two other things that I do want to mention. One, somebody sent me an email. One of the patrons sent me an email asking me to change the way their name is displayed on a Patreon card at the end of the video, and I cannot fucking find that email. So if that's you, send me another email. Or if you have that problem, let me know and I will fix it instantaneously, and then it doesn't matter if I lost the email or not. I despise Microsoft Outlook. Its search functionality sucks. So, yeah, I don't know. It could be a technical glitch. That's possible. And yeah, everybody seems to recall the same as me that this occurred last year as well. So, in any case, all right, so before we get any further here, I am going to throw a link that the ticker's already up, and this link is in the ticker, but since we're live, I'm going to throw a link to the Ardwulf Lair Discord community in the chat in case anybody is not on board and wants to hop in. It is a warm and welcoming and reasonable community so far. Don't screw that up, but everything is basically okay. I checked this, and part of the issue is that the notifications from Patreon really are really slapdash. So that could be, but I did check that, thinking maybe that was it, and I can't find it there either. So anyway, I got hit for a lot. I got 2 games plus the counter sheet, but one of the games is the Battle for Normandy, which was like $105. So it's an expensive game. The other game was Congress of Vienna, plus the 2 counter sheets. One is the World at War supplemental counter sheet, which I may or may not need, but it's like, I don't know, it's like $6. So why not? And the other was this 2024 replacement counter sheet. So I didn't get hit for quite as much as you fellas did, but I got hit worse than a lot of folks from Multimen because I bought 2 of those without realizing that they were going to send me a playtester copy. So I actually have 3 of those. So what that means, folks, is that at some point in the next couple of months, there might be a giveaway. Is all I'm saying. Because I don't want to warehouse this stuff. And I'm aware that I could wait a couple of years and it would go for a lot more, but than I paid for it. But I'm inclined to do a channel giveaway and help pay it back to some lucky individual. So, but that is not this week. I'm thinking about doing it as a complete surprise and not announcing it. So just bear that in mind, that we might have a giveaway that is hitherto unscheduled. Anyway, let's get into GMT. Where last we left our brave adventurers, we were in the year 2018. Let me fix this. And now we are in, I'm sorry, we were in 2007. Now we're in 2008 with Jeff Horger's Maneuver. I did own this game at one point. This is a light, very chess-like war game. I actually think it's got a lot of potential. It's played on a square grid with cards. Card-driven? Yeah, I would say this is card-driven, although not necessarily in the conventional sense. The card play is important enough to it that I think that's warranted. There's an expansion for this that adds new nationalities, and it's kind of vaguely Napoleonic, but don't take that too seriously either. Checking out the chat here. You weren't. I actually pushed the button on Congress of Vienna, which I thought I had ordered, but I hadn't, at the last minute. Not the last minute, but relatively shortly before the charge. Because I know I do want it, and it is the best way to get it. I have not yet done this. I should probably do this week, because there is not going to be... Well, nobody's... I haven't heard about an update kit for Battle for Normandy, to be honest. I don't know the extent of the changes, but I don't believe the game system changes are going to be that big. But it is like a 7-map, 12 counter sheet game or something along those lines. It's enormous, and I suspect that the counters may change. I don't know yet, but I haven't heard anything about an upgrade kit. If the upgrade kit requires them to put all the maps of counters in there, though, they might as well just ship, but you might as well just buy a new one. So, ugh. Yeah, I think it was just shipping, but if you happened to not be in the US, then you got charged whatever ruinous amount it would be for shipping, and nobody wants that. That's just crappy. But they did at least fix the charge for the counter sheet. So now, on the other hand, Mark McNair, and I can completely sympathize with this. Mark canceled his Battle for Normandy pre-order because he didn't think he was going to get to play it. I have played it, and I think there is a very good chance that I will play it again, because it's one of those things that we keep talking about doing at Winterfest. But the last couple of years, it's been, well, the new one might be out by then, but the new one hasn't been out, so I guess we don't have to worry about that. It is, I suppose, not impossible that it will arrive before the middle of February, but if that happens, then it's going to be too late, because we're already committed at this point to GTS, the Greatest Day Utah Beach. So... anyway, Marty hangs out a lot more on Consim World than I do, so he's probably more in the loop on this than I am. I don't hang out very much on Consim World. So I've got most of the games on the replacement counter sheet, so I felt like it was justified, and it was not expensive. So there's that. I can't argue with this. I've been saying this for a while. I've said this publicly. On the other hand, I'd rather have the errata counters than not have them, and if that means I have to pay a couple bucks for them, I'm okay with. If it's a couple bucks, right? And it is. If it is not, and it's supposed to be like shipping included, right? Where GMT eats the shipping costs. In which case, great. But then this has happened a couple of times. So, and if they're already shipping you some other stuff, then chances are it's getting slipped in the same box anyway. Hopefully. So. There's also a vassal module, which last I checked was fairly decent, although a lot of the off-map displays, like the dead piles and the rebuilds and all that stuff, were kind of in this same, they were kind of on the map graphic, and that's very difficult to deal with in vassal. I strongly prefer having a separate tab or page for that kind of thing. So, yes, there will be ECMO at Winterfest. Marshall Enterprises will be there, and there are, I think, going to be 2 Lavatai games running, one of which will be ECMO. So there's that. Away team. I got this on order now as well. So, all right. So let's get to maneuver here. I never actually got to play this before dealing it in some kind of pay it forward or something like that. It does look interesting as a very light war game. My initial thought was maybe I could talk the wife into this. That did not work. So, so that is what it is, and that was my level of interest in it. But there are some folks that like it. It's got a reasonably good rating. It's not the wargamiest of war games, but I would say it is. So there's that. Let's see. All right, we're still talking about the battle for Normandy here. All right, so still in 2008, we have Charlie Vassey's Unhappy King Charles. Now, there's a new edition of this that just came out. Do we have any information about that? We do. That came out from Phalanx pretty recently, like in the last 4 to 6 weeks or something like that. And the Phalanx version of it certainly looks very nice. This is about the English Civil War. I don't have a lot of games on that. I have a couple, but not like this level of game. I don't have like a strategic level picture of the English Civil War. So this would be one of the games that I would look at were I particularly interested in that topic. So there's that. And here's the original map, which I think looks totally fine. You'll see that this looks a lot like GMT point-to-point maps from the era from other games like Here I Stand and the Napoleonic Wars and a couple of other ones that we're going to mention tonight. So this is another one that is pretty well regarded, and it was well regarded enough that it got picked up over at Phalanx, who I think probably feels they can sell a lot of copies of it. So so there's that. And you can see, I think, that the new one is pretty sharp looking. It says 2024, but if it came out in 2024, it was quite late 2024. No, this is not the same as the War of the Roses. They're both civil wars, really, aren't they? But what we call the English Civil War was its own thing with King Charles, who was indeed quite unhappy. If you want historical background on this period, I would recommend one of the first 2 seasons of the Revolutions podcast, which talks about the English Civil War and Oliver Cromwell and all that jazz. So that would be, and to be fair, that is the amount of stuff that I know, because that is about all the research I have done on this particular period. So, all right, so moving along from that, we have another of the GMT point-to-point games from this period. Design credits on here go to Mark McLaughlin. Looks like that says developer. I can't really see that. Developed by Fred Schachter. So this is akin to Mark McLaughlin's other similar point-to-point titles like the Napoleonic War and Wellington. The other two, the Napoleonic Wars is rightly pretty well regarded. Kutuzov and Wellington less so. One of these two, I've never owned either of these, although I've played Napoleonic Wars several times. You'll see it's in a different scale. This and Wellington are a different scale than the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleonic Wars is pretty strategic. These are pretty operational. But you see a lot of the same mechanics. It's like a dice pool type of thing. As I recall, and frankly, Here I Stand borrows some of those mechanics as well. So at some point, Renegade will tell us something about what they intend to do with Squad Leader, and that might even happen before the license expires. So if they don't, I don't care too much. I've got ASL for that purpose. I am, however, very curious, and there are people that would like to see a new edition of Squad Leader, and I'd be happy for them if one came out. But if Renegade doesn't want to tell us anything about it, then oh well. So they have other priorities that they think they can make more money on, and that's, if that's their business call, then that's their business call. I can't argue with them about it. In any case, Kutuzov, you'll notice that the rankings have dropped precipitously here. With Kutuzov. I thought you weren't going to the expo this year. Am I wrong about that? Marty says Kutuzov could have been decent, but needed a stronger hand at development. The rules are kind of a mess and need streamlining. That's pretty believable. Here's the spread of what's in the box, which is, a decent amount of stuff. And I think the map looks decent too. Here is the map. But it's a point-to-point map, right? It's not particularly elaborate, and certainly the topic is interesting. But the game itself hasn't been particularly warmly remembered. Next up is Pacific Typhoon. This says Ben Knight is the designer. I'm not sure what role John Koussis had. He may be a co-designer on this particular edition. This is a re-implementation of Atlantic Storm, according to Board Game Geek. I've never played this either. This is a World War II Pacific card game with a terrific cover, by the way, which I believe to be a Roger McGowan cover. And it's pretty well regarded as well, but I've never personally played it. This came in a small box. There are every once in a while, GMT will do a game in like a small digest-sized box, like Battle Line, for example. Pacific Victory, which I've seen the box, is in that small format box. Well, if there's not much to say, I mean, okay, that's just, well, nothing to get excited about if they're not telling anybody. So, all right. So, okay, cool. That's cool. I'm glad to hear that. Marty says that John Koussis was a longtime WBC GM for Atlantic Storm, and he helped Ben with Pacific Typhoon. Okay. So there's that late night beer and pretzels game. I find that very easy to believe. This is the kind of thing I can picture people playing at 9 p.m. at Consim World after everybody's eaten dinner and no longer in the mood for anything particularly heavy. Really? Because I will not be buying this. I mean, if somebody wants this, cool, but this strikes me as something nobody asked for. I mean, I agree. Perfidious Albion, this is where I'm coming from on this personally as somebody who buys war games. But we do have at least the opportunity with this idea to maybe reach some and bring in some new people. I don't know. It really depends what they decide to do with it. Without having a little more information about what those intentions are, I don't know that there's much that can be said. Fast Action Battles The Bulge by Rick Young. Now, this was a series of games. We'll pull this up. A couple of which got not canceled. Well, yes, canceled. But they got sort of moved to a different system and replaced on GMT's P500 system. Fast Action Battles, there was supposed to be Dubno and Crusader, I think, were the other ones. But The Bulge, Sicily, and Golan all came out. And at one point, I actually had Sicily. This is a block game, so it is maybe not technically unsoloable, but I would call it, you probably don't want to solo it. And you can actually see that here. This particular game did pretty well. It seems to be reasonably well thought of, although I don't really hear a lot of talk about it now. But interest in the series seems to have kind of evaporated, and I'm not really sure why. Next, get rid of that. We're still in 2008, and this is actually pretty topical since there's a new edition of this coming out basically any time. Fields of Fire by Ben Hull. This is a modern, I guess we'll say 20th century tactical card game, but it plays very wargamey. You actually lay out the cards there are terrain cards, and you kind of build the map as you go. It's quite wargamey. Now, the deal with this is, it's interesting that it's got really a quite high rating, because I've heard a lot of negative talk about this. And almost all of that negative talk seems to circulate around the rulebook is difficult. Thus, the new rule book that I think you can download from GMT right now, and which will be included in the Fields of Fire update kit that will be, again, out anytime. So I agree with this. I think the road system has tons and tons of potential personally. So there's one other thing that I want to mention. So we did, as part of the Armchair Dragoons digital convention, which I hope everybody attended, last weekend, we did a Chit show special with some special guests, including Tim Densham from Catastrophe Games, Ryan and Wes from Warfrat Games, and we ran for about the regular amount of time, but that was an exclusive for convention attendees. That show will be released on Sunday, February 3rd, to the general public. And it's in my notes, so I'm not sure if I said it or not yet. The Chit Show is after January. The Chit Show is moving to Sunday night. We will be doing next week's show on Thursday and the week after on Thursday and the regular time slot, and then we will move the same regular time slot to Sunday night because there were conflicts. Grant from Pushing Cardboard wanted to do a live show on Thursdays, and then we moved to Thursdays, and he's like, so we worked it out, and Thursday's not really that optimal for me anyway, whereas Sunday night I'm always sitting down here in front of the computer anyway for the most part. So this is kind of an issue with some block games where there's a lot of like flawed blocks. I don't know that I've certainly seen a couple of flawed blocks from like GMT and the Commands and Colors games, but I also have like a million extra blocks for that, so I don't care too much. I'll just leave those out. Mr. Mark Herman is here. Mark, thanks for stopping by. Compass is on Thursday too, but you know, I'm going to do the show when I'm going to do the show. I don't actually care if I'm in conflict with somebody particularly, but I'd rather not be, just, you know, because why if you don't have to. And it's not working out that well for me. So that will be the Chit show. I'm not sure if I mentioned that at the beginning of the show or not. In any case, now one of the interesting things here about Fields of Fire is, as you can see, this is the original game dealing with the 9th Infantry Regiment and with some of their actions in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And I believe that Volume 2 does the same thing with 2nd Marines or something like that. Something like that. So, Mark's, yeah, John, you're going to be at WBC. Fantastic. I will see you there. I don't know if I'm going to be there for more than a day or two, but that is the plan at this point anyway. So still in 2008, but we're still in 2008. We now have Pursuit of Glory. This is, do we have, I don't see it. I don't own any of these Paths of Glory family games except for Paths of Glory itself. So this is the Paths of Glory system. Designers listed here by BGG are Brad Stock and Brian Stock. Paths of Glory is an all-time classic as far as I'm concerned. And this system basically just takes that and does the Middle East with it. There's one on the Eastern Front too. And I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. But this was the first of those spin-offs from Paths of Glory. And it's pretty well regarded. Their original game came out with an unmounted map. There's a more recent printing with a mounted map, as I recall. I don't really care about the mounted map personally. However, if I'm going to like travel with the game, which I have done with Paths of Glory, by the way, that's kind of where maybe I'd prefer a mounted map, because if I don't have to travel with Plexi, that's cool that I don't have to travel with Plexi. Illusions of Glory is the Eastern Front one. Yeah, so all they really need is a Western Front one and then linking rules to play all three of these together. I think that might be particularly interesting. But the Western Front would need to be... You'd need to make some changes for the Western Front to keep it fun. Let me put it that way. Well, I will have like videos scattered throughout the week as well. There should be an unboxing video on Thursday this week. So, all right, moving on to still 2008, Blackbeard, The Golden Age of Piracy from Richard Berg. So this is kind of a complete redesign from Berg's original Blackbeard game that had been published by Avalon Hill. I have not played this game. However, it is important to note that this is a very different game than the Berg Blackbeard game that Avalon Hill did. That game is very simmy. It's basically a piracy simulator, and I thought it was pretty cool. But by modern board gaming standards, people feel like there's not enough player interaction, and those people are not wrong. This almost complete redesign, it was an effort to fix that, but I think it resulted in a game that I didn't like nearly as much. Even though the components are nice, there's nothing physically wrong with the thing that I noticed, but I just never got into this. Whereas I really quite liked the original Blackbeard. I thought it was pretty neat. So, up to 3 2008 games. Okay. I was going to say, I thought it was P500 there for a second. This is incredibly incredibly easy to find for a pretty cheap price. Let me put it that way. GMT had it on their deep discount page for quite some time before they finally managed to get rid of it all. Mike, awesome. I have started it too, but I haven't like really got into. I'm like in the first section still because I'm just reading other stuff or haven't had that much time to read. And what I have spent time reading has actually been the audiobook that I just finished the other day. So. Mark, I might take you up on this if I remember to bring the thing to WBC, which is fantastically unlikely. So there's that. However, I will note that Mark, your book is already listed on both Goodreads and the independent Goodreads alternative what's it called? Hold on, I'll tell you what it's called. It is called Storygraph. I'm on both of those. I was tickled to see that they made it up there. I don't know how they get their information though, to be fair. So there's that. All right. So moving on from Blackbeard, which is again not my favorite bird game, not my favorite GMT game, and not my favorite pirate game. Next is Clash of Monarchs by Bob Kalinowski. This is 7 Years' War on a point-to-point map. Here's the map. It's not a bad-looking map. This is another one that's got a bit of a mixed reputation. I think on the surface, this sounds quite appealing, although this kind of point-to-point map, this looks really busy to me. So I really kind of want to play it before making any judgments about this. My understanding is that this rulebook was a bit problematic as well. Let me put it that way. This looks really congested. But 7 Years' War is a cool topic, right? So GMT or BGG says this is re-implemented by Clash of Sovereigns, which just came out in 2023, according to this anyway. And I think that's accurate. Excuse me. I think that's accurate. And this also released with a problematic rulebook. There is an updated rulebook available, I believe, for both games. But as you can see, where is this? Greece? Somebody's selling it in Greece for €8 in new condition. So apparently Greece is a better place to buy war games than Australia. So, yeah, sort of. So there was I think Phil might be talking about something else, but there was a Paths of Glory player's guide that contained a bunch of strategy articles and maybe some optional rules and some additional cards. And I know for a fact that the additional cards are now included in the more recent printings of Paths of Glory. I also know that that's not the version I have, so I don't have those extra cards. That's why I was talking about buying a new copy of Paths of Glory when they did that. And check out the stash on Callendale here, by the way. Look at that, man. He should be like a 1978 baseball player with that mustache. All right. I'm not sure what I'm even looking at here. All right. So next up, and again, we're still in 2008. GMT does a lot of games and has done a lot of games per year for quite a while. So it's going to take a while to get through these. That's why I'm trying to move relatively quickly. Successors, the Battles for Alexander's Empire. I want to say this is basically a Mark Simonich game with an assist from Richard Berg. And I think John Fearer may have been the developer on this. I don't own this game. I've never owned any version of this game. This originally appeared from Avalon Hill. It was later picked up by GMT, which did at least a couple of printings of it, I believe. And then there is a more recent edition that came out in, say, the last 5 to 7 years or so from Phalanx. Which apparently good for Mark Simonich because they managed to do, pretty nice iterations of this and Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage, and I think there may have been another one. This is fundamentally a multiplayer game, though. I think this is not going to shine at its best with 2 players. This says best 4, take that with a grain of salt. But in this case, having not played this, I would be inclined to agree based on what I know about it already. This is the kind of thing that is going to, I think, function best if you have the full complement of players. And as you can see, this is a point-to-point map as well. And although the points are maybe not don't stand out quite as strongly from the map, that might actually be good. And you don't have that just enormous density of points that you do on the Kutuzov map or the Clash of Monarchs map. This game has a very good reputation. I mean, you could do a 2-player version of it, but you'd basically be designing it yourself as far as I know. But you might want to look around because somebody may have done an optional rule or bots or something like that. Marty says that the GMT version is much better than the Avalon Hill version. Sure. My question would be more about the Phalanx version, if anything, because that's the one that has actually been in print more recently, although it isn't necessarily easier to get just based on dates. This goes a little high, but not, not crazy. These are not crazy prices. All right. Still in 2008, Chandragupta, Great Battles of the Mauryan Empire, India, 319 to 261 BC. This is actually an interesting topic that I know not too much about. And it is a pretty unique game. If we look at, I've got this one too, because I've got them all. This was designed by Stephen Welch, but it's the system designed by Mark Herman and Richard Berg for Great Battles of History. This is one of the reasons why I really like Great Battles of History, because you're just not, who else has done stuff like this, right? So what comes in here are a bunch of battles that most people, including myself, probably haven't heard of. Here they are, and I am absolutely not going to try to pronounce any of them. But there are, as far as I can tell, 8 battles in the box. And as far as I know, there was not an expansion for this. That is, well, it's correct according to BGG, but I believe I remember that there was not an expansion for this, as there was for a number of other GBOH titles. I like GBOH a lot. This is interesting. We'll hit another one in a minute here that I think is also really interesting and is a way to get your hand simulations of battles that happen in the ancient world that we don't see very many games on, right? There's, yeah, I would say that this is true. I would too, actually, but unless we're playing GBOH on a regular basis, then if we're playing occasionally, which is how I play GBOH, then what that tends to look like is everybody wants to play like a Roman battle or Greek battle or something like that, and not necessarily these obscure battles. So, DJ Flippy, are we talking about Chandragupta? I did not have that problem with mine. Mine's clipped and ready, punch clipped and ready to go. So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of really cool ancient world stuff in India. I will point that out. And Pakistan, I suppose. So there's that. And there is, as Kevin Featherly points out, a new printing of Hoplite coming pretty soon. So, Chandragupta, I think it looks very spiffy, but I haven't had the chance to play it yet. Maybe next year on I got to get this done in this calendar year, we'll put some more GBOH on there. Barbarossa Kiev to Rostov, Advanced von Borries game in the GMT East Front series. I've got one of these, not this one. I've got Army Group Center, the new Army Group Center set up on the table right now. And I haven't touched it since setting it up. But this is one that I've actually played some of the smaller scenarios in. It's an interesting system. It has got, okay. All right. Tony Mello mentions Board Game Bandit's online store is going out of business. They don't have much left, but they have GBOH Alexander for like $72 Canadian. There you go. Board Game Bandit. If anybody needs a GBOH Alexander, you do want one of the more recent printings of that. I will tell you, because it's got more stuff in it. Even the deluxe, the most recent printing of the deluxe includes the expansion Tyrant, which the previous deluxe edition, deluxe expanded, whatever it's called, did not contain. It is kind of hard to tell the difference between those and talk about them for that exact reason. Advanced Squad Leader spotting around. Thanks for stopping by. We are in fact clipping Advanced Squad Leader right now, still on the Italians. I feel like I'm not getting counters done very quickly. So this is the Army Group South section, and it can notionally be combined with Army Group South, and if you want, with Barbarossa Crimea. But the integration between these rule sets was never really what it was supposed to be, and that's one of the reasons why there are a round of revisions happening now. What I don't know is if there is any intention to redo this with the new second edition rules. I think it's possible. Could also be combined with Crimea if they chose to do that, but I haven't heard that that's happening. This is one of the relatively few. This is one of the relatively few. Not sure where I was going with that. Nope, not sure where I was going with that at all. Oh, well, never mind. So, yeah, they did, but not permanently. Well, I guess they did permanently, but they did, and then they didn't, and then they did again. Let me put it that way. All right, so moving on, and we are finally in 2009 with a Craig Besink game. Craig Besink is one of the best-known designers of block war games. Triumph and Tragedy was one of his, and I think that is a very strong game. Here's one that I haven't played, Hellenes, Campaigns of the Peloponnesian War. And as you can see, we've got a pretty classic-looking block game design going on here. It seems to be reasonably well regarded. There's a decent number of blocks in it. Is that the actual map? Or some kind of conference map? Let's see if we can find clearly it's not the actual map. Here's the actual map. This actually looks kind of like it's on that cardstock stuff, which I'm not a huge fan of. I'm glad that really nobody is using that anymore. Well, yeah. So I don't really know what, other than Army Group, I don't feel like I have like a real roadmap that I am aware of to the reprinted Barbarossa series, right? We know they're going to do Army Group North next, and they're going to do Army Group South after that, but I'm not sure what will be happening next. I would certainly like to see updated editions of this series, and I would be curious to see them carry this series forward into more of 1942. Crimea goes a little bit into 1942, and actually Kiev to Rostov might as well. But I'm not really sure. This series seems to have lost a lot of energy and attention over the last 15 years or so, which is about the amount of time I've been paying attention to it. At least, coming back to wargaming. But at the moment, they seem to be focused on those reprints. I would like to see a new Typhoon. I would like to see a new Kiev to Rostov in Crimea and update the whole series. I would be delighted if that occurred. So, in any case, Hellenes also looks fairly interesting, and you can see that there's a card mechanic too. This doesn't look like a traditional card-driven card thing, but it looks like, well, there are definitely cards. Let me put it that way. My expectation would be that this plays more like a Columbia block game, because that's where Craig Besink has done a lot of Columbia block games. If we look at these, East Front, Rommel in the Desert. I'm not sure he might have been the lead on Rommel in the Desert. But there's a couple more here as well. Med Front, West Front. So he basically did the front series, the East Front, West Front series, which actually I think is fairly decent, to be honest. My inclination is to agree with this, but I would like to see a new Typhoon, because I'm specifically interested in that topic. And Typhoon is kind of the progenitor of the series at GMT, but it's because of that, it kind of shows its age more than the other games. Let me put it that way. All right, so Marty says it bounced off Columbia because they have a hard page count on rulebooks. I'm not sure that's the case anymore. I don't know this, I suppose. I believe Columbia was at one point printing rulebooks in-house, like with a laser printer. And it does not appear that that is happening anymore. So that might be a problem that Columbia had just on just the way they did the production, and they couldn't handle it, and now it's fine, right? Although, if you look at the Alliance video, that's got like an 8 or 10 or something like that, maybe 12-page rulebook, and there's only like 6 pages of rules. So Columbia's block games do tend to be very simple and straightforward. But moving on from Hellenes, once again in 2009, we have the Halls of Montezuma. And this is designed by Mike Welker and David Fox. Now, my understanding on this is one that took a lot of heat as well. My understanding on this may have been, the rule book had some problems. Let me put it that way. There's like a lot of errata for this. This may have been one of those ones where they sent the wrong version of the files to the printer and they printed a draft rather than the final version, something like that. I know GMT did that at least once. I'm not 100% sure that this is the game. This is interesting, I suppose. Christoph de Klerk bought his first GMT game last year, Wolfpack. Wolfpack looks really neat. That's Mike Berticelli's game. It was very popular and well played at SD HistCon, let me put it that way. So Halls of Montezuma is about the Mexican War. There aren't very many games on the Mexican War. I think the map looks very plain. Is this really the final map? Because there's like no text on this map at all, or hardly any text. It makes me feel like maybe this isn't the finished graphic. But in any case, the art looks nice. But I'm not sure if a revised rulebook for this was made available. But if it is, and it is, then it's on BGG. So you can get updated rules for it. And like I said, I know it had some issues. But the topic is, I'd like to see more games on the Mexican War, to be honest about it. On the other hand, Fort Circle has a game called the Halls of Montezuma, or Halls of Montezuma, coming anytime, basically, which is the sort of the companion game to the Shores of Tripoli on this topic, but it is going to be a far more abstract game than this. I can tell you that. All right, next up, still in 2009 is, and we'll go a couple more, and then I'll do the the Noble Knight spot. 1805 Sea of Glory by Phil Fry. This is sort of a Napoleonic naval game with a map. I don't like this map. It's not really the layout. It's that ocean color. I don't like that ocean color. I think it looks weird. It looks way too purple. Other than that, I have no particular commentary on this game. There you go. Well, I mean, I just don't think there's a high information content in the BGG rating. Let me put it that way. I have had people say that once you get past the problems that happened with production of Halls of Montezuma, that there's a pretty good game in there. And there's a few of these problem games that GMT's released over the years that are like that. So, yeah, I'm just not crazy about this color palette. It's just not particularly cool. Naval War on the operational level, on the other hand, does sound potentially interesting. I've never played this. I don't think I've ever even spoken to anybody who's played this. But as you can see, it's a block game with blocks that are bigger than the hexes, which seems an odd mechanical choice to me. But there's that. That's cute. I will agree that is cute. This is another one that you should be able to, if you're interested in this, you should be able to score it for not a terribly large amount of money. So there's that. Noble Knight's got it for $25. BGG Marketplace has it for, now you don't know what condition this is until you go click through it and look, but even so, this does not go for $1 bazillion. Yes, that is the whole point. Halls of Montezuma to the Shores of Tripoli. So that was kind of the point of what Kevin Bertram was trying to do over at Fort Circle with the pair of games. And I believe he's got like basically the nod and wink from the Marine Corps to do those too, which is kind of awesome. All right, we'll do one more before the mid-show spot. Elusive Victory, Air War over the Suez Canal, 1967 and 1973. This is a Terry Simo design, but it is kind of in the same family of games that were designed by Lee Brimacombe Wood. That includes things like Downtown and Bloody April, the GMT Bloody April, not the SPI Bloody April. Red Storm would be another one of these. They're sort of, I feel like they're a hybrid between tactical and operational. I don't think they're purely either, but you get a lot more of like the mission planning end of it in these games than you would in just like Luftwaffe or something, you know, that type of game with that type of scope. John C. mentions The Burning Blue, which is another one. I've got that one as well. And I haven't played it, but it looks pretty cool. There's shitloads of hidden information in it. It is not solitaire, in my opinion. That said, I do think it has a huge family resemblance, because it's the same topic, to RAF, which is a solitaire-capable game. So I am okay having both of them. So I'm not sure what's up. Yeah, I'm not sure what was up with that, Brant, to be honest. I mean, I don't know that any of this is like copyrighted material or trademark material or whatever. But I also understand why you wouldn't necessarily want to thumb your nose at the Marines. But I'm not sure what the problem was with this, calling it Fleet Marine Force. Littoral Commander strikes me as a somewhat awkward title. Let me put it that way. A lot of people will think you are saying Littoral Commander and not Littoral Commander. So, well, I mean, and this is a good point, actually, for an air game, but you're maneuvering individual planes and stuff like that, which to me is tactical. But again, you do get a lot of operational stuff. Now, this is the Arab-Israeli air war here. I had this at one point. I think I won it in one of the Armchair Dragoons drawings at Origins. And I actually subsequently acquired a second copy of it, which I think I sold. The first one went away in a pay it forward at one point, and I traded it for something. People who are interested in this conflict and who like this family of games speak very highly of this. So I feel like maybe I should have hung on to it, but at the same time, I'm a lot more interested in the Battle of Britain. So, and I kept that one, and that's not going anywhere. But supposed to be quite a good game if you are interested in this topic and you are interested in the air component of this topic. All right, so before we get any further here, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to try to get caught up on the chat, and we're going to hear from our good friends at Noble Knight Games, the official sponsors of the Counterclipping Show. Take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more, going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at, complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
All right, thank you so much, Noble Knight Games. Affiliate link in the video description if you're going to spend some money there. Oh, by the way, they do have a promotion running, I think it's still running right now, for free international shipping if you get over a certain threshold. So check that out. That can potentially make a huge difference if they're shipping stuff to, say, Australia or someplace like that. You can find that information on the Noble Knight website. So, and yes, by all means, Danny Seckery, as Danny says, go ahead and hit that like button. And Wargame, I didn't get mine from Wargame Vault. I think I got mine from Gamecraft or something like that. I think they're the same cards, though. I didn't get them for Downtown. I got them for Red Storm, and then I can't find Red Storm. I have literally all the stuff for Red Storm, including the expansion and all the extra, the third-party scenario pack and the data cards and all that stuff, and I can't find a friggin' game. So, a little bit, yeah. Well, yes, but at least it's to some extent handled, right? All right, so moving on from Elusive Victory, we have PQ17, 2009 game from Chris Janiak. We've played a little bit of this, and I don't feel like I really quite got it yet. This is a game about the Arctic convoys between the Western Allies shipping stuff up to the Soviets, in what is pretty hostile waters, okay, kind of rounding that northern cape of Scandinavia, and shipping stuff to Murmansk for the most part. Very interesting mechanic here for hidden units, and detection of those units. I think this has a lot of potential, and it's also fairly photogenic. Now, this is a block game, but the blocks are the ships. The air stuff is just counters, right? So not everything's a block in here, but the ships are provided with a degree of fog of war due to the blocks. And I'm not sure I think the map is all that attractive, but I found the game visually intriguing. This is the map. And Hey, we're working again. That's cool. So you could kind of see the theater of operations taking place here. Here you got Archangel. Murmansk is up here, and you've got Scandinavia. There's a Norway 1940. There's a Norway 1940 expansion for this that I have but have not played. One of the challenges for this, and this was supposed to kick off a whole series too, which I think this has a lot of potential. One of the challenges for this is it's basically not solvable. It's riddled with hidden information. So that's a bit of an issue if you're trying to play this thing. Could you figure it out, Solitaire? Yeah, probably. But the whole point is the hidden information. It's one of those games where the hidden information is so important to the game that it's basically not solvable. So, Perfidious Albion says, was a great concept. They can easily do that for a number of convoys. Yeah, you could do this for the Atlantic convoys. On the other hand, we do have Atlantic Chase now to somewhat cover that need, but I would love to see this much crunchier take on that topic in this series. But like I said, as far as I know, other than the expansion, there has never been anything else for this. I mean, when I say not soloable, I mean it's not good. It's not a good idea to solo it. Can you solo it? Sure, you could solo anything. I don't think you'll get the most out of the experience if you're solitairing it. Let me put it that way. Could you figure out the rules? Probably. So, all right. So still in 2009, we are moving on to The Battle for Normandy by Dan Holt. Now, this is what it sounds like. This is the Normandy invasion up through, as I recall, about the middle to the end of August. This is a very solid game. It is a monster game. There are a decent number of scenarios, but I feel like there could be more small ones. But I've played the campaign on Vassal, and I thought it was quite good. The problems that I thought I had with it, with one exception, could easily be me just misunderstanding something. And I do think there's a little bit of ambiguity in the rules regarding mandatory attacks. And for some reason, I had a hard time getting a direct answer on Consim World when I had a rules question about that. But nevertheless, very solid game. The new edition should be out any time, and I am very much looking forward to seeing it. I have ordered it. I had it. So this was one of those things that, like, I get back into wargaming. By that time, this was already not available anymore. I did end up, and it was like the grail game at that point for me. I'm like, oh, this looks amazing. I did eventually get a copy of it. I ended up dumping that copy when the new edition was announced, and I felt confident that the new edition would actually be coming out. So Michael Simon says that the first rulebook's not written that well. The living rules from the expansion are better. I agree that the living rules from the expansion are better. I didn't really have a huge issue with it, though. There were a couple things that I found ambiguous. That's why I was asking questions on Consim World about it. But I didn't think there weren't any huge yawning gaps or something like that. I would be delighted to see this. Like I said, I think that that system has a lot of potential. I think that's not the greatest rulebook either, to be completely honest about it. And I'd like to see what that designer has in store for that series. I would be delighted to see it, regardless of who puts it out. Perfidious Albion says that Battle for Normandy for such a monster game is surprisingly easy to play. As I've seen a decent number of monster games, and it is, well, not low complexity, it is relatively low by monster game standards. It is relatively easy to play. There are mandatory attacks as one of the mechanics in here, but it's a somewhat looser mandatory attacks rule that isn't as annoying as it would be in, say, Russian Campaign or something like that. So, yeah, John C. As John C. mentioned, Chris Janiak also designed Wild Blue Yonder, which I have not played that series at all. So, okay, Jeff T., welcome to the show. As Steve Rochelle mentions, Vassal Engine, all one word, .org. It is a computer program that you can download modules for different board games for and play them either yourself at home. You kind of do need the physical game because usually there's something missing from the module. And it's not automated. Most modules are not automated. You can, in fact, build a certain degree of automation into a Vassal module, but most module designers don't do much of that. There are exceptions. But for the most part, it doesn't enforce rules. You have to know the rules. It doesn't like automate anything. You have to do all that. It is literally a digital map and pieces that you can use to play the game with, either at home by yourself on your computer or on the internet with other people, and presumably either play by mail, which it works good for, or via just like a voice chat program like Skype or whatever. Discord works fine for that, to be completely honest. As a number of people have pointed out, I have never seen any rules enforcement on Vassal, except insofar as, for example, the GTS Vassal modules will tend to include like a combat calculator, so you don't have to do all the number crunching yourself. So to that extent, maybe we call that rules enforcement, but it's not rules enforcement in anything like a serious way. So the other cool thing about Vassal is that you can use it to play a game that you may not necessarily have the physical space for. Whether that is because that game is big or because you don't have the ability to leave it set up for a month or 6 months or whatever it is. So, and when the time comes to set it up, there's a little red X in the upper right-hand corner. Click, and it's done. You don't have to start counters out again or anything like that. So there are a lot of virtues to playing with Vassal. So, all right. So, Battle for Normandy. Again, I give this game a very good rating. I give it a better rating than Board Game Geek does, in fact. But I don't know exactly to what extent the changes will be, but I have a high degree of confidence that they will not wreck the game. Let me put it that way. All right. All right. Yeah, you can use it like this, and I have on occasion, but am I necessarily better at that than the person that put the Vassal module together? Maybe that person is an expert. I'm not. I don't know. It kind of depends. So, in any case, after the Battle for Normandy, we are getting to the Caucasus Campaign by Mark Simonich. Now, this is kind of a kindred game to the Zachbond, what gets called sometimes the Zachbond series, which I tend to call now the Simonich Operational Series, since there's at least one game in that series that doesn't have Zachbonds, which is kind of the signature mechanic of these. This has been out of print for some time. It probably goes for decent change for what it is. I do feel like it has to some extent been replaced by Stalingrad 42. So if you're particularly interested in this topically, I would grab Stalingrad 42 because you can get it a little more easily than running this down. That said, Noble Knight's got it. Board Game Geek Marketplace has it. So if you're super interested in this, unlike Ukraine 43, where there's two different editions of it, and you really kind of want the second edition, as far as I can tell, there's only one edition of the Caucasus Campaign, as far as I know. I've played the family, but I've never played this particular game. I'd be a little surprised if it wasn't at least quite good. It has a fairly good BGG rating, but I will observe that the counters look, at least the backs of the counters look a little different than they do in other games, later games in the series. And of course, Mark Simonich is kind of the triple threat of designer, artist, all that stuff, doing literally all of it for his games. So, one of the top designers working in our space right now, in my opinion. All right, next up is Dead of Winter, the Battle of Stones River for the Great Battles of the American Civil War series. I played this last year at Buckeye Game Fest. We had a great time. This is another one, though, where there's a certain amount of slop in the presentation in terms of the rules. I strongly prefer the more recent rule books that have come out under Dick Whitaker's guidance, the series rule books. There's also a fair amount of slop in the scenarios in here. We played I've actually played this twice. Brant, thanks for stopping by. I've actually played this twice, of which some of that gameplay is on the channel because I did it on Vassal. we played when we did it on Vassal. There's like the battle scenario for the whole battle. There's like one or two smaller scenarios, and then there's like an approach to battle scenario that starts like the previous day, and you kind of march in and turn it into a meeting engagement. There are a lot of problems in that scenario, but the main campaign scenario which we played last year, works considerably better. No, Death Valley is the one that got wet. So, and I consider that situation more or less resolved at this point. I think I think several people are mixing this up with Death Valley. This is just Stones River, not the whole Valley campaign. So Chris asks, this is really a Stigler question, if whether a reprint of Dead of Winter is planned. On the one hand, I would suspect no, because this sat around at GMT for quite a while. On the other hand, under Dick's guidance, I do feel like there's been a bit of a resurgence or renaissance even of interest in GBACW, and recent entries in the series have gone very well. So in terms of how well they've sold, or at least how quickly they've hit their P500 numbers. I don't know what GMT's warehouse inventory is. But this was sitting in the warehouse for several extra years, and I know GMT really wanted to be rid of it. But at the time, Twin Peaks sat around too, and now both of these things go for a bit of extra cash. 125 for it's a decent sized game. I think there's 4 counter sheets or something. It's 4 maps, and I think there's 4 or 5 counter sheets or something like that. And I will. Ooh, yeah, okay, I forgot about that. So this is actually a Dave Powell game design. The series design is by Richard Berg. And Dave Powell is, of course, one of our foremost experts on many, many Civil War topics, including Western theater stuff. So I acquired this, and I have played it now twice. I am very happy with this game. And once again, my opinion of it is a bit higher than Board Game Geek's. However, like a couple of the other early games in the series, the Chickamauga game in particular, there's a lot of slop in the playbook, and I think, frankly, the series rulebook at this point was not as clear as it should have been, considering the heritage of this system dating fundamentally as it does to the mid 70s, right? And if you didn't hear this at the beginning of the show, the next game in the series, By Sword and Bayonet, by our very own Mr. Stigler, is coming out pretty soon, and I think it's shaping up as though that may be in GMT's February shipments. And Stigler has also agreed to be on our very first Sunday night Chit show on February 8th, 9th, 8th, what was it? 9th, February 9th, Sunday, February 9th. I'll mention that again at the end of the show. So, all right, moving on from Dead of Winter. So I don't have to gush about it anymore. Here's one I haven't played. Pax Baltica, designed by Goran Bjorkman and Stefan Ekstrom. This is an area map, a rather colorful area map. This is the Great Northern War, which is an interesting topic that I don't, again, know a lot about. This is kind of in that period where Sweden is kind of a great power, fighting against the Russians, and some other parties are involved in that as well, including the Prussians. At one point. So interesting topic. I don't really know a lot about it. It is a block game, apparently, which I'm not sure I knew that. Well, this is true. I do have that picture of you and Doc clipping counters together. So, yeah, I'm not actually, I actually thought about, canceling the show because of this, but I also kind of didn't want to because I will still be able to catch the end of the game, I think. Let me put it that way. I am not sure who the actual kings involved are. I got Charles the 12th in Sweden, and yeah, Peter the Great. So how about that? So yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely correct. It does look like at the moment it's 21-7 with the first half about to end, Ohio State. but we'll see. I also have this idea that I'm a total jinx, and if I watch the game, they'll lose. So, which doesn't make any sense, and chances are pretty good they're going to lose an important game anyway. They just managed to win 2 important games in a row. So this particular year, that usually doesn't happen. All right. Moving on from PAX Baltica, which I don't know a ton about, but it doesn't have a dire rating or anything, so it might be worth a look if you're interested in the topic and you don't mind the fact that it's an area map and a block game, which I don't personally mind either of those things. I'm more of a hex guy, but I'll look at the fuck is this? All right. I will look at block or point-to-point games, and there's plenty of examples of those that I do like. So, all right, Stalin's War by Ted Racer. This is World War II East Front. What I'm wondering is, what the hell is this? Because... okay. What the hell am I thinking of? I'm getting this mixed up with something else. What am I thinking of? I thought it was this. So this is a Ted Racer game. I'm trying to think of what other game I'm confusing this. There was an East Front game with a point-to-point map. Somebody in the chat will know that GMT put out, and I thought it was a Ted Racer game, and I thought this was it. And clearly that's not the case. I have seen people complain about the map layout. Dark Valley's definitely got a hex map. I've played that. Stalin's World War II. I think that is the game I'm thinking of. There's a Stalin's World War III too. No, that's not it. Stalin's World War III is different. Barbarossa to Berlin. Thank you, John C. That is the game I'm thinking of. Thank you. So I've heard decent things about this game-wise. I've also heard that this map layout makes it kind of impractical to actually play. But there's that. Hexy, thanks for stopping by. I like Ted as a designer a lot. I think Ted is an excellent designer. I think he's also one of the top designers working in the space right now. And I think anything from Ted is worth a look. But this is not one that I have personally looked at. Now, this says it's card-driven as well. And looking at the cards, it sure looks conventionally card-driven to me. That is a space, conventionally card-driven games on a hex map. Something we don't see very often. We certainly have seen it with Empire of the Sun, which is a complete masterpiece. And if this is if this is close to as good as Empire of the Sun, it's totally a winner. So let's see what people want for it. $40 from Noble Knight, 20s and 30s from the Board Game Geek Marketplace. The rating is not terrible, so who knows? 6.8 doesn't sound that great, but 923 among war games is not that bad. So I think this might be worth a look. All right, so Perfidious Albion has 5 games tonight to add to my Ferengi acquisitions list. Well, you know where to go, right? And in a lot of cases, Noble Knight's prices are completely reasonable. Chris Yap says it's very scripted. Well, okay. I mean, if it's going to be your main game for the next 5 years, perhaps that's an issue. John C says that Barbarossa to Berlin uses a Paths of Glory vibe. It kind of looks like that to me, to be honest. No, well, I'm not saying it's similar to Empire of the Sun. I'm saying if it's approaches as good as Empire of the Sun, then it's going to be cool. Brezhnev's War is... I haven't played Brezhnev's War. I don't have a high opinion of Brezhnev's War based on talking to people who have played Brezhnev's War. Let me put it that way. I don't think it's the worst game of all time, but I am glad I didn't pick up Brezhnev's War. Let me put it that way. All right, and Carl said the first 3 turns you're forced to place particular events in a specific way. I could see that would be annoying. So there's that. In any case, we are now into 2010. And not a bad looking map, and not bad looking counters particularly, I will say that. All right, I have generally chosen to leave these kinds of games off of these lists, but I figured I would throw it in here as well, just as an interesting data point, that in 2010, GMT did release Leaping Lemmings by John Paniski and or Rick Young. Looks like both of them. I don't know what this is about, and it sounds like it's got an okay family game ranking, I guess, 6.4 total. Not expensive. If you're really into this, be my guest. I don't have anything to say about it. You can see, now this I think is funny, though, where you can see these 2 clearly wargamers playing Leaping Lemmings, right? Because nobody that's not a wargamer has this particular dice tower. So that I think is amusing. The Spanish Civil War by Javier Romero, 2010. I have 3 games on the Spanish Civil War. I have For Whom the Bell Tolls, which is the Europa game, which I have no plans to play ever. I've got Land and Freedom, which looks really neat and interesting. And I have what I think would end up being for me my preference for Spanish Civil War games, Crusade and Revolution by Compass. They did a deluxe second edition of that. That's really very nice. Mounted map, oversized mounted map. It's nice. Pre-rounded counters, all that jazz. I never played it, but I remember the Lemmings computer game or video game or whatever we called it at that point. This is pretty funny. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. It would be hilarious if somebody repurposed that, actually. I wouldn't mind a look out of curiosity at this particular Dunnigan legendary game, but I wouldn't pay $1,000 to have a look at it. Let me put it that way. All right, so here we have hex map, a bunch of display boxes, decent looking game. Here's some pictures of the counters. Counters look like they're on a little bit of a thin stock, but that's a thing that GMT did from time to time as well. Probably because their printer kept switching stock would be my guess. But this is a pretty interesting topic. If you are specifically interested in the Spanish Civil War, you're going to get a lot more info and I think insight in something like this rather than playing it out in World in Flames or something like that, right? All right. So Noble Knight has it for $95. It's going a little bit less here on the Board Game Geek marketplace. So there is apparently some people that do want this game. From what I can tell. And here, well, no, that's not what I thought it was. Barbarossa Crimea. This is the last original game released in the GMT East Front series. The only thing that has released after this has been the second edition of Army Group Center, which came out in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Very early 2022. This is an interesting installment in the series for a couple of reasons. One, it goes well into 1942 because it's Crimea. It's one map because it's Crimea. And I mean, I don't mean it goes like 6 or 8 months into World War II, but it goes into 1942. I think that's how I said that. I think. Clearly, I need some more of this gasoline that I'm drinking. I will find some cocktails to make with this stuff. It's really not working for me right now. There is, Albrecht, on BGG, there is a monthly thread for vassal opponent finding that every month there is a new thread, and then there's another thread that like posts that thread so you can get to it and subscribe to it and see what people are playing. If you don't have anyone to hand, then I would check that out. Or you can hop in, if you're not there already, hop into the Ardwulf Discord server. I put a link in the chat earlier. I'll throw another one in here in a bit. And there is a looking for opponents folder in the Ardwulf Discord server. And I would love for people to get together and I know it's happened a few times, but I would love to see more people get together and get connected to play games together on the Discord community. That would be fantastic. So I haven't actually played this. I might have played one of the small scenarios, but I haven't played the whole thing. But I did play out that 1941-42 situation at the sort of the isthmus that leads to the Crimea in OCS Crimea. And I had some idea of what happened historically because I had played a little bit of this game. So, reasonably sure that they're not connected. I think that wasn't... I forget. So I'm going to throw another link to the Discord server. There's a link to the Discord in the ticker, but if you can just click on it instead of having to type it out, I think that's better. I think the East Front series has a lot going for it. Now, it's not necessarily capable of handling absolutely anything that you think of throwing at it. You do a Normandy game in it, for example, I think you'd have to make huge adjustments. Even to do like a 1942 or 43 East Front stuff, I think you'd have to make some adjustments. But for what it's covering, which is basically the first 6-7 months of the East Front, I think it's got a lot going for it. I think there's some really interesting mechanics. I think the way that asymmetry is handled in this system is very interesting, where there's an asymmetrical sequence of play. But because of that, the Soviets end up working quite differently from the Germans because of their dependence, much greater dependence on headquarters. The Germans didn't even have headquarters. Their big bottleneck is more supply than anything else. The one from the Spanish Civil War game from Compass is Crusade and Revolution. I don't know if it's still available or not, but I suspect that it might be. I appreciate that, Danny, as well. I'd like to keep people informed on that. I haven't pushed the button on the new Sound of Drums offering yet, but I'm thinking about it. In any case, if you're a fan of this series, I think the maps are terrific. You do have this inset map for Sevastopol. In this particular case, you get a similar one for Leningrad in Army Group North. So, and we'll see that when the new version of Army Group North comes out, which I do expect to be this year at this point. If I had to bet $5 on it, my bet would that we will see second edition Barbarossa Army Group North sometime in Q2. That's my best estimate. Not particularly based on inside information, but there's that. Maybe they have a new type of headquarters. I mean, I could think of a number of ways that you could potentially address the changes to Soviet doctrine that start to happen as the war proceeds, right? It may be adjusting the turn sequence, but I think a switch in the turn sequence in mid-game sounds like not an awesome idea. So I would be inclined to try something different were I in charge, and I am not. So Vance, get it done. In any case, I'd love to see a reprint of this too, but I don't have any information that says they'll be doing that. All right, up next is Serpents of the Seas, Flying Colors Volume 2. This is, I believe, the only Flying Colors product I don't have. This is American Revolution in the Age of Sail, and it goes, as you can see, a little on the high side. This is actually not a terrible price. None of these are terrible prices for Serpents of the Seas. I think there might be a reprint of this coming at some point. Thomas Bandy, I keep mentioning this, but I grew up in Lorain County. Say hello to my buddies from Falcon's Quarry if you see any of them. Normandy 44 is a terrific game. I like it a lot. Yeah, like a barbarian. How about that? So Flying Colors, this is a standalone game. You don't need Flying Colors to play this, okay, as is the case with the rest of the series as well. So you can just pick up the one you're interested in. I've got all the other ones, and I've got the bigger edition of the original Flying Colors game, which includes the expansion material, and I think a couple extra things that showed up in Danny Gable. Danny, you should send me an email. My email is in the ticker down there. I'm just saying. Introduce yourself. So, it kind of does. But that's one of the things, when I started reading the rules again, I hadn't gotten to the way the mandatory attacks work. There is a mandatory attacks rule. Again, I don't think it's quite as hard as it is in like Anzio or something like that. Okay. that doesn't help. We have in fact heard from Noble Knight. So Mo from Mo's Game Table. Mo is here. Mo, thanks for stopping by. In any case, this is sort of it's like a slightly higher scale than something like a Wooden Ships and Iron Men. So you can handle entire little fleets of ships rather than that being quite difficult in a system like Wooden Ships and Iron Men or Close Action or something like that. There's also kind of a dual mechanic where you can drill down and get a little more detail in here if you want. I have not tried that personally. So I'm getting very little counter clipping done here tonight, I got to tell you. I got some extra counters ready to go, and we haven't done dick with them yet. Speaking of Normandy 44, here we go. Mark Simonich's Normandy 44 2010. I've played this about 3 or 4 times. I think it's a terrific Normandy game. It does simulate the landings, which a lot of people don't like, but in this case, at least, simulating the landings takes like a minute and a half. So it's not particularly onerous in this particular example. Percy Block, thanks for stopping by as well. So, good looking map. Oh, this is interesting. Since we've talked about both of these games tonight. Here you can see the size comparison between the Battle for Normandy, which is the big map, without, I think, the expansion material, and whoops, cruise here. And Normandy 44, which is in the upper right-hand corner, which is a one-map game. I thought there was going to be an expansion for Normandy 44, but maybe that was that variant that appeared in C3I at one point. I don't recall. I was kind of hoping what we would see is like an expansion that would extend the thing through Cobra or something like that, but we didn't see that. Now, on the other hand, if you have the Battle for Normandy, it does go through Cobra. And if you had the expansion, if you had the expansion, you'd go through Cobra. If you buy the new one, I believe it will include all the expansion material, map scenarios, all that stuff. So there are similar comparison maps on BGG for like various Market Garden games as well. Very highly regarded here on Board Game Geek. In this case, I do agree with Board Game Geek's assessment for it. Now, Greg Grant says Mark has been working on a Cobra expansion for Normandy 44, which would be like, here's my money, take it. And we haven't heard anything about that. I kind of assumed that maybe it was that Hitler's Rommel's Dream scenario or whatever it is from C3I, which was as Vince Ree points out, was the alt history scenario that appeared in the magazine. So, and as we can see, Stigler got a designer copy of By Sword and Bayonet, so it's very close now. Very close now. All right, here is Labyrinth, the War on Terror, the war on my wallet with the number of expansions that there are for this thing. This is a Volko Ruhnke design. This is sort of a progenitor or precursor to the Coin series. And I think you can see kind of an evolution from, say, Twilight Struggle, which is not designed by Volko, to this, which was, and then to Andean Abyss, the first Coin game. I think you can kind of see a designer intention through line running through those games. A lot of people don't want to play this for reasons that I think should be fairly obvious. It's a sensitive topic and they don't want to deal with it. Cool, that's fine. It is, however, a terrific game. There is a digital version of it too, which I have played. It's good too. It's available through Steam and it's relatively inexpensive. I don't know if it includes any of the expansion material or not, because there's like at least 3 or 4 expansions of this. Well, only 3 apparently. But if you got the larger box, the 3-inch box, I have had the original game, and I think I ordered the 3-inch box when GMT made it available. So my original game is in the 3-inch box, and I have the first 2 expansions, and I've ordered the 3rd one. So I think this game is great. It is a 2-player game. I don't think there's any reasonable way to... I guess you could split it, because each side plays 2 cards on their turn. You could like split the hand, and I mean that seems silly though. I think it's fundamentally a 2-player game. Pretty sure that it fully supports solitaire play of either side at this point as well. Commands and Colors Napoleonics. This is my personal favorite Commands and Colors game. It is terrific, from the extensive family of games designed by Richard Borg, who will assimilate us all someday. There's a bunch of expansions for this too, and if we look at this, we'll see that there's basically army-level expansion. So what you get in the core game is basically the French, the British, and the Portuguese, and everything that's in there is... You might have something from Waterloo, but it's not the whole battle, because you would need the Prussians, and there's no Prussians in this box. But you can do like Hougoumont, you could do that, for example, because there's, I think mostly the defenders are mostly British there. So almost everything else in this core box is Peninsular War stuff. There's still cool battles. So if you want to see stuff like Austerlitz or Borodino or stuff like that, then you do have to stick your toes into the various expansions. Number one is the Spanish. Number two is the Russians. They've got the Austrians, the Prussians, as well. We've got this generals, marshals, and tacticians, which adds like a couple extra decks and a bunch of optional rules. And we have this epic Napoleonics and the grand battles, which, and I think there's a grand battles 2 coming too, which is just basically the really big battles played on 3 maps and all that jazz. So I believe that you are essentially playing the expansion, because the expansions all kind of replace the deck. So what you're kind of do is using your core game components and playing the particular expansion that you're playing. So I believe, if I'm correctly interpreting Perfidious Albion's question here, the answer is that they can be used separately with the base game. They're not standalone expansions. You need the base game, but you're basically playing, if you're playing, for example, the Rise of Al-Qaeda, you're playing the Rise of Al-Qaeda. It's not just like one contiguous thing. Although maybe there's rules for that. I don't know. I haven't played any of that stuff. All right. These are both terrific games. I'm a little lukewarm on Twilight Struggle now, just as a player, but I still have a lot of respect for what Twilight Struggle accomplished as a game design and as a force in the marketplace to kind of help promote wargaming for a very long time. So this has been in the cooker for a long time, and I don't really know what the reason behind that is. It might well not be a GMT thing. So don't necessarily assume that these kinds of delays are necessarily a problem on the GMT side. There's all kind of different reasons. All right, Chad Jensen's Dominant Species. This is what I would call a Euro, I guess, but I haven't played it. It's basically about evolution. The Ice Age is coming, and you are one of these families of species, and you have to evolve before the ice crushes you. That's my understanding of what this is. I would actually be interested in playing this, because thematically, I think it's a reasonably interesting topic. But it's one of those that I'll be happy to play if I'm like there with somebody who's playing it. But I'm probably not going to buy it on my own. And it is from the late Chad Jensen. And it's a pretty well-regarded game. I have heard people tell me they feel it's really complicated, but those are not wargamers telling me that. That tends to be the people from the, I don't want to say Euros, because they're not necessarily Euro players, but people, non-wargaming board gamers, will probably feel like this is a big brain burner. Let me put it that way. John C. says it was very popular in the Philippines. Danny, are we talking about Labyrinth, or are we talking about Dominant Species? Is there a digital version of Dominant Species? So I would be intrigued if there was, to be honest. Do they have... there's a card game. Joe Faust says it's 90 minutes of fun crammed into 6 hours. Okay, yeah. The digital version of Labyrinth is excellent. I've got that too. I more or less buy all of those. So there's that. I want to say this might be out of print from GMT, but it's not crazy expensive from anybody. Well, you can still get it from Amazon. That probably indicates that it is still in print. That's not really what I mean, but I see where you're coming from there. Well, nobody's calling this... nobody's fooled into thinking this is a war game, unless it's somebody that is, like, totally new and just sees GMT and says, oh, well, it must be a war game. Other than that misunderstanding, I don't think anybody's going to be fooled. All right. Now we have Germantown. This is... the 7th game in the Battles of the American Revolution series from Mark Miklos. I think this particular one is with Bill Madison. I don't know very much about this battle at all, to be completely honest. Actually, we got to the topic. I've been pretty good at getting to the topics fairly quickly most of the time. Not every time. Lately, right? I had 34 games to go through, and we're going to do that, but I've been blazing through these, because that's a lot. I normally, when I have like a list-based show, normally the number of games on that list is somewhere between 20 and 25. In this case, there was 34. So, and as John C. mentions, this will be in Battles of the American Revolution Tri-Pack number 2, which also ought to be out this year at some point. I think I've gotten to it faster. I did have a lot of news items. Sometimes I've had like only 1 or 2 news items. This happened, let's get to the stuff. However, we're well in front of the average here. Let me put it that way. All right, so Germantown. I don't know much about the battle. It's in the American Revolution, and I believe some Germans may have been involved at some point. Outside the city of Philadelphia, and less than a month after the British victory at the Battle of the Brandywine Creek. So I have never played this series, but I could not say no to the tri-pack because it's a tremendous value in a single box for what I felt was an incredibly reasonable price. And I have ordered tri-pack number 2 as well. And frankly, for me, oh, wow. Okay. So I don't know what the actual scale is on these, but I think it's a lot higher. There's a lot fewer moving pieces here than there would be in a BAR game, right? BAR is Battles of the Age of Reason. It's from Clash of Arms. It is sort of a fork off of La Bataille. It's a pretty crunchy system, pretty detailed, a lot of units, roughly the same scale as La Bataille, so pretty much battalions. In this case, here's the counters. So this ought to give you some insight as to exactly how much less granular this is versus, say, BAR Germantown. And they have done a Germantown for BAR. So the BAR game that I do want to try it. The BAR game that I have is Prague. It's the only one I've got, and I'm not buying any more of them until I at least try one of them, which may or may not be Prague, because I know other people who play BAR. It is a game system that I would like to try. So my advice, if you're interested in this series, is to wait for the tri-packs. And I think there's a reprint of the first tri-pack too, or it's still available, one or the other, I forget. All right, we mentioned this earlier. It's a very Bergian title, if you think about it. Chariots of Fire. This is Great Battles of History in ancient Mesopotamia. There's some very cool stuff in here. So we've got a Sumerian battle featuring Sargon. We've got Megiddo. We've got Kadesh, which there have been a couple of games on Kadesh. And the Troy scenario looks pretty cool because you've actually got these Homeric counters for the Homeric heroes who can like get in duels and stuff. It's actually pretty sweet. This is another one that I haven't played, but I've got it fully punched and ready to go. But this like very ancient world. This stuff's ancient. You know, the ancient Greeks. This period, at least at 2300 AD, is closer to Alexander than Alexander is to us. Let me put it that way. I'm not sure that was as impactful a statement as I meant to make it. So I gotta talk with Mr. Miklos at SD HistCon. He is a fine gentleman. Mark Harmon says that Kadesh is one of his favorite battles. And yeah, the title's this is the kind of thing that Berg liked to do, like Into the Woods for Shiloh, for example. I don't think it's a good title, but I understand that it is a title that Berg was amused by. Let me put it that way. All right. Yes, Eric of Eric's Table Napoleonic Battles does BAR streams as well as La Bataille. So if you want to see that game system in action, do hop over there. So, no, there are definitely chariots in it. I can confirm since I have clipped the counters. Yeah, this is another one that I really do want to play. What do we got playing here? This is Egyptians versus Hittites. I mean, how cool is that? Come on. Well, yeah, this is one of the few battles that we have like documentation on at all, to be honest. So, and that's probably one of the reasons why there's 3 or 4 games on it too. Cool. That's a cool idea. I could bust that down. All right. Next up is another series game, Nothing Gained But Glory. This is part of the Musket and Pike series, but it's not designed by Ben Hull. It is designed by Brian Berg, Asklev Hansen, and Knut Grunitz. And what we have here are because I've never played any of these, it's a little difficult to keep track of exactly what's in what. This is the Scanian War, which is, all right, so 1659 to 1678 is the time frame that we're talking at. And the battles that we get are Nyborg, Fehrbellin, Halmstad, Lund, Malmo, which is a pretty well-known battle, Landskrona, Varksau, and that's it. But that's a decent number of battles in this. I don't remember which games in the series will be in the second dual pack, but whenever they would like to publish that, I'll be happy to buy that too. And I haven't played the series. I've got the first Men of Iron, or Musket and Pike dual pack, and it looks very intriguing. So, well, it kind of that title kind of makes sense. I guess I was never a big fan of the show, particularly. I saw a little bit of it. I didn't think it was awful. I just didn't get into it. And I didn't see the revival at all. And I assume that's what was being jokingly referenced here. But Twin Peaks is a very nice value pack. At least at the time, it was a very nice value pack, because you got 2 decent-sized battles in it, right? All right, speaking of Washington's War, this is Mark Herman's game, a new take on the classic We the People. We the People? We the People. That Avalon Hill had released. I think there are some mechanical changes between this and the original. This is, I think at this point, probably easier to get, and I think it's still available from GMT at this time. If it's on Amazon, you can make an assumption that it's still in print from GMT at a very reasonable price too. I have played this once. It is a pretty neat game, actually. You can definitely, speaking of design evolution, right? It's because this is pre. Mark, if I say anything that's dumb, correct me. This is originally came out as We the People before For the People. So I think you can definitely see sort of the evolution of the card-driven mechanics as we move from what was then We the People, now Washington's War, into For the People, and then from there into, say, Empire of the Sun. This has a much more political control of areas aspect to it than something like that's kind of in For the People too. But it's kind of, I don't know if it's true. This is a simpler game. It's a significantly simpler game than For the People, and probably is not a bad game as an on-ramp to For the People, now that I think about it. HUN644 New mentions that it is on Rally the Troops. Yeah, and I think isn't that the change between this and the Avalon Hill version, was you drop the battle cards? Something like that. So there you go. Cool. Thank you, Mark. All right, so Stigler says that South Mountain is being completely redone for the upcoming Gleam of Bayonets 2. Greg Lovbach feels the Twin Peaks version wasn't what he wanted to see. Cool, that's fine, that's fine. I'm more interested in Antietam for that particular thing, because at least I've got South Mountain. Yeah, I think Twin Peaks is the only game I have on South Mountain. There have been several others. West End did one back in the day. There's one from the Gamers, MMP. I forget when it came out. Mike, in your case, it doesn't matter. You know what you're doing. You just play For the People. Unless you want to play Washington's War, in which case, by all means, go right ahead. If you're trying to roll into higher complexity war games, then I think it's not a bad strategy play Washington's War, and then see how similar ideas are developed in a more detailed way in For the People. They're both terrific games, by the way. So, Blue Velvet's a good movie, and I like his Dune as well. It's got problems, yeah, it does. But I could talk for 2 hours on the subject of the various Dune interpretations. So, yeah, I think you said that over on one of the other things there. Well, it doesn't even matter though, does it? So. It's still in the third quarter. I wouldn't count anybody out yet. Does Legion have a South Mountain game? Are you thinking of Revolution games in the Blind Sword series? I don't think so, but I think they're also working on it. Carol, thanks for stopping by. This is the Gamers thing I was thinking of, and this is a Regimental Sub-Series. I think this might have been the last RSS game, actually. I have not watched any of it, John, so bear that in mind. It could be dominant for all I know. I'll end up watching the highlights. So, I have not played Wilderness War, nor do I own Wilderness War. I would like to try Wilderness War. That's also kind of an important... I think that would help to fill in the Volko design timeline between his other designs, because that's one of his. Joe Press says there is a Blind Sword South Mountain game. I'm having trouble keeping track of it, to be completely honest. So if there is a Blind Sword South Mountain game, then I have it, because I have everything except the most recent one, which is the first day at Shiloh. So there you go. You should be rooting for other Big Ten teams here, John, and not Notre Dame anyway, if you ask me. So, Fire on the Mountain from Legion. There you go. That actually looks pretty intriguing as well. I looked at that. There's some YouTube video on that. That's an interesting looking game. That is not the game I was thinking of. Danny Gable, it's in the ticker. It's visible right now. Ardwulf's Lair at gmail.com. You're pretty close to me. We should figure something out. So, all right. Anyway, moving on from Washington's War, we have the last game we're going to cover tonight. Pensacola, another game in the Battles of the American Revolution series by Don Hanley and Mark Miklos in this particular case. And I know very little about almost any of these engagements. I've read a little about Saratoga and a little about the American Revolution. And of course, as an American, you have some idea of what went on. But in terms of like the detailed military history, I don't really know very much of it. But this, I think, is a very good venue for beginning to explore that, because this is a pretty straightforward series. Battles of the American Revolution. It's easy to play. The games are now, at least, they're in these nice value-added packages where you can buy one box, and you're paying for one box, but you get 3 or 4 different battles in it on mounted maps and thick counters and all that jazz. So, pretty much, I do root for Michigan to win if Michigan is playing an SEC team, just to get that on the record. So, I know this might seem weird. I don't care about Notre Dame particularly, one way or the other. I would like to try Bayonets and Tomahawks too, to be fair. I played Plains Indian Wars at SD Hist, and I thought it was really very good. I wasn't really shocked because it's a John Paniski game, and John Paniski's a good designer, but I didn't expect to personally like it as much as I did. So, all right. So that is going to cover us through 2010 for GMT. Now, if I can manage to do it properly, I may be able to cover the rest of GMT's entries in 2 additional shows. It's more likely to be 3. Will not be next week. We'll handle it at some point. So let's talk about what's going on. We have about 10 minutes. I've got, as I mentioned at the front of the show, we are moving the Chit show to Sunday nights, same time slot, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That will start on February 8th. Our last Thursday's show will be on January 30th, okay? And I believe we have Mr. Grant Dogleash from Columbia Games that particular week. Because I don't want to do a show Thursday and then immediately 3 days later do another show on Sunday night. What I will do on that Sunday night, the 2nd, is release the special edition that we did for the Armchair Dragoons convention that night instead. I might do that as a premiere, I don't know, and I'll probably watch it, but that's when it will go live to the general public, other than the 7 people that watched it from the convention. So February 9th, we will be back with the Chit Show, and our very special guest on that show will be Stigler. And did I get a confirmation for next week's show? Not yet. I have a guest line. I don't want to make an announcement, and then there's a problem. So I will hold off on an announcement for this Thursday's show, actually. But the guest is very exciting. Let me put it that way. I have not played Bayonets and Tomahawks, but I have played Plains Indian Wars now, and like I said, I liked it a lot. So it is a bit of it can be depressing, right? As the Americans and the Federals and all that stuff kind of roll over the Native American lands. But there is a realistic, reasonable path to victory in that game for the Native American players. We just didn't get there. But in fairness, the guy who was running the game was on the other side, and he knew what he was doing, and I really didn't. So there's that. All right. So one other thing that I'll mention is that, yes, do expect a surprise giveaway at some point in the next month or two regarding the extra copy of Forgotten Battles, because I have no particular need. Stigler, thanks for stopping by. I have no particular need to warehouse 3 copies of Forgotten Battles. I bought myself 2, one to just play Forgotten Battles, and then the second one to complete that Ostfront set. So I will combine it in maybe one giant box duct taped together with Crimea and the Hero City when it comes out, and Third Winter. So, oh, that's no good. That's no good. Whew. Anyway, yep, smash the like button if you have not done so already. I should really come up with a funny tagline to smash the like button. Go clip that tag, that like button, or something silly like that. But I feel... Yes? It's been sitting... Yeah, but John, you're in Denver, and it's just going to take 2 extra days to get to you because you're further away from Maryland. So yeah, I remember I've played it, so, and my opinion of it is quite high. So, looking forward to getting it on a table. We are talking about, playing it we'll figure all this out at Winterfest next month, but we're talking about it being our game for, Buckeye Game Fest, which would be cool, for one thing, because we've got plenty of people that know how to play it. And we would be able to move pretty fast, which is fantastic if you can do it. And we could probably get a lot done in 5 days. So it's not impossible. They did, John, I'll show you. I may end up bringing, it's not even going to matter if I bring it to Winterfest or not, because I can come get it from home. It's 15 minutes away. I'll show you the typo. It's amusing. So, yeah, I got it a couple of days ago. So, but remember, a typical shipment time for multi-man to me, barring post office misadventures, which do happen from time to time. Typical transit time from MMP to me is usually 2 or 3 days, and 3 days tops. So, John, I'm not sure. Did you play Forgotten Battles at all? You may not have, because you guys were in the full swing of the 10K project by the time it really started to hit Winterfest as a thing that was getting played every year. So I had this situation in Beyond the Rhine where every wargamer has this happen to him from time to time, where I set down a piece of paper I like set down a piece of paper without sufficient care, and there was still a little bit of air under it, so it kind of floated and skidded across the table and went right under the front, and it was a mess. So we had to fix that. So okay, so you have played it, so you know what it is. Then I don't have to explain it. It's the next segment north of, for those who don't know, from Third Winter. It is mateable with Third Winter. It will be mateable with, and therefore with Crimea, and it will be combinable with Hero City when that comes out. I don't know what, Sean Sullivan, thanks for stopping by. I'm not sure what the timetable, and we may find this out. I may ask Tony when he thinks it's likely to hit the MMP pre-order page. But my sense is that Hero City's probably not that far away, but that might still mean next year. I don't know yet. So we'll see. I know there's Stefan Aquaviva's working on a Kursk game. Stefan is the designer of Hungarian Rhapsody, which is very good. Roland, the designer of Beyond the Rhine, is working on Cross-Channel Attack, and that's been in development, like active playtesting, for at least 5 years, and I think it's more like 7 at this point. So there you go. Actually, Carl, I didn't even think to ask you. So if you've got news, let us know. You may not have news yet, and that's okay. So, but I'll be encountering Chip and Curtis and all those people. So it really depends I imagine it depends on what's going to be done first. I've always had the impression that when Multiband puts something up for pre-order, it's pretty much ready to go. I mean, there's not really any serious development remaining to be done. There may be some corners that need to be painted in for playtesting and that kind of stuff. So Carl, I can only imagine that you're going to be absolutely snowed under with work, handling all of these game lines for a Multiman. That said, they're all good. So I wish you the most efficiency. I wish you the greatest success. Let me put it that way. All right, so folks, we got a couple of minutes here, but I think I'm gonna call it because I don't really have anything else to say. I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. If you haven't done it already, go ahead and click the like button and subscribe to the channel, or follow if you're on Twitch or somewhere else. There's a bunch of links in the video description if you want to help support the show. But remember that if you showed up tonight or any other night, you are in fact supporting the show, and I really appreciate it. And there's an affiliate link and all that other stuff and all the socials. I put a link tree in the video description, so you didn't have this list of like 8 different social media networks. I'm still on most social media networks, including the recently restored TikTok. We'll see what happens with that. All right, folks, it's been a great night. I want to thank everybody for coming out once again, and I hope you all have a great rest of the week. We'll see you all again soon.